But I wasn't thinking about my future, I wasn't praying, I wasn't talking to God or anything like that. But I just remember lying there trying to go to sleep, and then all of a sudden it felt like a wave that just came up over me. And the first wave was that I knew that I was loved by God. It was a really rich, profound, like breathtakingly beautiful experience of God loving me that reminded me of those earlier experiences of that I'd already had as well. And I just felt incredibly loved, just overwhelmingly loved by God. In a way that I'd never encountered before. They talked about Jesus like you could know him. If you'd asked me before that experience, I would have said I believed in Jesus. I would have said that I had faith in him. As I said, Mass was important to me. When I think about my vocation, I can see a golden thread running through it all. And that golden thread really is that I want people to experience the love of God that I've received. My name's Father Chris Ryan, and I'm a missionary of God's Love priest. I'm currently the parish priest of St Declan's at Penshurst, Our Lady of Fatima at Peakhurst, and St Joseph's at Oatley. I'm also the director of the Arete Centre for Missionary Leadership, which seeks to form people for mission, for evangelisation, and in the art of leadership. So my vocation story, I guess, starts with my family. I'm the eldest of two children. My sister's just a year younger than me. And growing up, I guess faith was always important for me. I often joke that I'm a GCB, a good Catholic boy, and I went to Mass every Sunday with my family. I didn't really rebel against that. I enjoyed going to Mass, I liked listening to the homilies, but at about the age of 16 or so, and so it was about that time that one of my teachers, he'd really been asking me to go on retreats and camps, maybe for about 12 months or so, and I kept saying no, until one day he asked me in front of my friends after school, and I was a bit embarrassed that he'd asked me to go on something religious, something Catholic, in front of my friends. And so, well, I told him where he could shove his retreat, and I slammed the door on the classroom and I walked out. And the next day he came and found me, and the first thing he did was apologise that he'd embarrassed me. And I'd never really met a teacher who'd done that before, and so I was taken with his apology. And at the end of that conversation, I found myself saying yes to going on the next retreat that he asked me to go on. I went there for two reasons, really. I mean, I think one of them was I was thinking that if I went, I could say to him after that, look, I've tried it, it's not for me, and I wouldn't have to go back. And then the other reason, very ironically, given that I ended up as a priest, was I thought there might be cute girls there. So what I found on that retreat instead was a wonderful experience, really, of meeting people who were a little bit older than me, who talked about faith, and especially about the person of Jesus, in a way that I'd never encountered before. They talked about Jesus like you could know him. If you'd asked me before that experience, I would have said I believed in Jesus. I would have said that I had faith in him. As I said, Mass was important to me. But these people talked about faith in a different kind of way. And in particular, they talked about Jesus like it was possible to know him now. In my mind, I really think Jesus was kind of a historical figure for me. I believed that he died, I believed that he was risen from the dead, but the thought that I could know him was a really new idea for me. And so the other thing that I really noticed about these people was just, I didn't have the words for it then, but what I would say now is they had a joy. That as they talked about their relationship with Jesus, a clear fruit, a clear impact of that friendship was that they knew joy in their life. Their experience of the love of God meant that they were different. They were really real. They didn't hide the challenges of life. They didn't hide their own experiences of weakness or of difficulty, but they also kind of really shone with a joy that I'd never seen before. And I was really clear that I wanted what they had. And so I responded as fully as I could on that weekend to really opening myself up to the possibility of an encounter with Jesus, of coming to know him personally. I found myself asking that question nervously. I think I was probably scared that God might call me to be a priest, but I was trying really hard to be open to him at the same time. And so I remember really clearly in the summer between year 11 and year 12, I found myself at a number of different occasions and in different ways, either reading or hearing the story of the call of John the Baptist. That we have that in all four Gospels. The story of how John is called to be the precursor, the one who leads the way to Jesus. And so each of the passages actually refer to a little bit from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 40 of the prophet Isaiah, which says, "A voice cries in the wilderness, prepare a way for the Lord." And in different moments, it was on retreats, it was also my own personal prayer time and at Mass, I heard that passage over maybe a 6-week period, and I found myself going, is this God's way of asking me to be a priest? Is this the way that the Lord wants me to be a priest? And I found myself saying, well, Lord, I really want to be open to you. If that's what your call is on my life, if that's what you want for me, then I'm happy to say yes to that, even though I was nervous. The really culminating moment of that was that I was on a week-long retreat, and there was a priest who was visiting from the United States, and towards the end of the retreat, he asked us if there was anybody who felt called to be a priest, just to stand up in their place. And so I did that. I felt like the Lord had been speaking to me over that time, and so I stood up in my place. And he'd made a big deal of making sure that, it was just about you and God, not to watch what anybody else was doing. It was just about you and God. And I was really focused. I was standing up and I was praying, saying yes to this call to priesthood. And I remember tears streaming down my face as I did so. So I was completely in the zone. I was just focused on what God was doing. In my heart, I didn't hear that after I'd said yes to that call to priesthood and to consecrated life. So that was how I started year 12. I remember the very first religious education class of year 12, the teacher said, what's the most important decision you're ever going to make in your life? And various people answered questions, and they were saying, well, what career and various things. And the answer that the teacher was looking for well, it would be who I'm going to marry. And the unit was about marriage. And I found myself thinking, well, I don't think I'm going to get married. I really started year 12 thinking I'd be a priest. But at Easter that year, I met a girl, and we started going out, and we went out for the rest of my year 12 and my first year of university. But as I started going out with this girl, I found myself thinking about other things and really trying to work out how was I going to be faithful to God, but perhaps as a layperson, and I tried to pretend that I hadn't heard that call to priesthood. And so I did that for maybe the best part of 2 years. When we broke up though, thoughts of priesthood came flooding back to me. So I'd started a law degree and realised that I really wasn't meant to be a lawyer. I thought briefly about teaching, thinking I could teach religious education, I could evangelise young people that way. But once we'd broken up, thoughts of priesthood had come back so strongly. And so I do remember though, I wrestled with it. I remember being with my sister one time. We were driving home from somewhere, and I said to her, it was late one night, and I just said to Kate, I don't know if I'm meant to be a priest, and even if I am meant to be a priest, I don't know if I really want it. And I guess, the thought of being celibate was probably the biggest challenge that I was kind of facing up to there. And so she said to me, and it was a great piece of advice, she said that she thought if the Lord really wanted me to be a priest, he would make it clear. And then secondly, that if he wanted it, I'd want it too. It wasn't too long after that that I'd been out for dinner with some friends, and I came home and I had a cup of coffee because I had an English essay to write for university. And so I sat down at the computer to start writing the essay, and then I thought, it's late at night, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. And so I went to bed, but I think probably because I'd had the late coffee, I was wide awake. But I wasn't thinking about my future, I wasn't praying, I wasn't talking to God or anything like that. But I just remember lying there trying to go to sleep, and then all of a sudden it felt like a wave that just came up over me. And the first wave was that I knew that I was loved by God. It was a really rich, profound, like breathtakingly beautiful experience of God loving me that reminded me of those earlier experiences of that I'd already had as well. And I just felt incredibly loved, just overwhelmingly loved by God. That was the first wave. And then the second wave was that I just knew I was meant to be a priest. It wasn't like I heard an audible voice as such, but at the same time I felt the Lord spoke to me so clearly in that moment to be his priest. And all those thoughts about John the Baptist and being able to prepare a way for the Lord, being a witness like John, to make a path for others to come to know Jesus, that all came flooding back. So a few weeks later, I went to see Father Ken, the founder of the Missionaries of God's Love, and I'd known Father Ken for quite some time. He'd once asked me about vocation, and I said I'd thought about it, but I decided it wasn't for me. So he really had no idea what was coming next when I said to him, look, this is what's been happening in my life, and I really want to be a priest. I thought I'd have to wait for about a year, but he said, well, look, how long would you need to sort of get things organised? And so I managed to defer uni, talked to my parents about it, and I literally joined about a month later, maybe even a little bit less than a month later, and began my journey with the Missionaries of God's Love. So the Missionaries of God's Love had really, they'd walked with me, and one of the things that as I got to know them was I saw a group of young men who were real about their challenges and struggles, but they had that same joy that I'd seen in that group of young people that I'd first met those years ago. They also, they were able to talk about their lives in such a way where I thought I can relate to these guys. I'd like to do mission with them. I'd like to serve with them. So when I look back upon my seminary formation, when you start in the Missionaries of God's Love, you go to Canberra. And so for me, that meant that I just moved 20 minutes up the road. So I'd grown up in Canberra, and so I was still living in the city that I was used to, that I'd grown up in. And when I think about my novitiate, I really think about it being pretty much one big struggle with little moments of clarity that I really was in the right spot. I think that's for a few reasons. The main reason was I think that God was doing something really important in me, that he was helping me to show me to myself and helping me to learn and understand things about me. And he was inviting me and calling me deeper too. And so I felt like it was a stripping back, not taking away my identity, but helping me to discover who I really was. I feel like I changed a great deal in my first couple of years in the Missionaries of God's Love. It was a tough time though. In the beginning when I joined a little bit later than everybody else. I didn't enter until the beginning of April. I found some of the brotherhood, which is a really important part of being an MGL. I found it challenging at times. I'm sure I was difficult. I don't know that I was the easiest person to live with. I'm sure I was still learning how to live out of home. So there were all kinds of challenges there. So I firstly made my final vows as a missionary of God's love. And I want to just really stress and emphasize that, because that's actually really, in many ways, the most important decision that I've ever made, which was to say, yes, I want to ask to be admitted as a finally vowed member of the Missionaries of God's Love. In a sense, for us as MGLs, our ordination follows on from that. Then I was ordained to the diaconate, and 6 months later I was ordained to the priesthood. No priest is ordained for himself, he's ordained for the church. And in the Missionaries of God's Love, in a particular way, he's ordained as part of being part of the MGL Brotherhood. The readings that Sunday, the gospel was the call of John the Baptist. And in fact, it had also been that reading when I made my final vows and my initial vows. So it was a beautiful way in which the Lord had just shown me at each of the moments where I made big commitments to Him and for Him, that He had really called me in the first place. As a 16-year-old, hearing that sense of vocation for the first time through the words of Scripture, the calling of John the Baptist, that my understanding of myself is that I'm called to be like John the Baptist, to prepare a way for the Lord to others. And at each of those moments, the Lord, we just had those readings. We didn't plan it like that. It was just that they were the readings of that day.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
I've always felt the Lord leading and guiding me through priestly ministry, and especially through the appointments that I've had. So when it was announced that the World Youth Day would take place in Sydney, I was really excited, but I was a parish priest and I was just expecting that I'd be involved, like many parish priests, just simply bringing a group of young people from the parish to Sydney. And so when I was asked then to coordinate the journey of the World Youth Day Cross and Icon, I had a funny experience of flashback, because I'd met the World Youth Day Cross before. The World Youth Day Cross had come to Australia in 1992, and at that stage I'd just finished Year 12, and I'd been involved in some of the organisation around the World Youth Day Cross when it was coming to Canberra at that stage. So when I was asked to coordinate the Cross and Icons journey in 2007, it was very much a flashback to that original moment, thinking, I feel like I've been prepared for this and been readied for that journey. And so all of the work I'd done with evangelisation of young people, and even right to the very point of meeting the cross, was a really significant experience for me, and just helped me just know that the Lord was asking me to do this particular role. I remember thinking too, after I'd finished the journey of the World Youth Day Cross and Icon and was wondering what was next, and was asked to do seminary formation, I remember thinking that it was really the best thing I could have done after I'd been on that journey. I'd been out of the Missionaries of God's Love brotherhoods for about 2 years through the World Youth Day Cross experience. And so to go back into our seminary formation was to go right back to our identity, our mission, what makes us, and for me to reflect upon that and to really be immersed in the MGL life in a new way was a really enriching experience, for which I'm really, really grateful. When I think about my vocation, I can see a golden thread running through it all. And that golden thread really is that I want people to experience the love of God that I've received. That I really believe that there's nothing more important than someone discovering the person of Jesus Christ and falling in love with Him and discovering what it means to follow Him. And so, in a way, everything I've done in my priesthood to date has been at the service of that. And I can see that golden thread running through it all. Right now, I've got to say I'm the happiest I've ever been as a priest. And part of that is that I love trying to create communities, parishes, where right at the very centre, their focus is evangelisation, where they're helping to reach out to others and bring them into that saving encounter with Jesus Christ. And I love the work that I do at the Arete Centre, because it actually also helps to equip other parishes. That I'm not just looking after our place, parishes where we're called to serve, but I'm hopefully contributing to other parts of the church around Australia and New Zealand, seeing those parishes being renewed through people who have become fired up for the church's mission, really revitalised and energised and passionate about helping others to know Jesus Christ and to share the gospel with others as well in turn. So if there's been a golden thread through my priesthood, it's been that, and I'm just so grateful that I have the opportunity to serve in the ways that I currently do as parish priest and as director of the Arete Centre. if someone was discerning a vocation to the priesthood, there's probably a few things that I'd suggest to them. The most important, I think, is coming to a place of interior freedom, where you get to the point where you say to the Lord, Lord, I don't care what it is, I just want to do your will. Where you get to a place where you say, I don't mind if it's priesthood, great, if it's consecrated life, great, if it's marriage, great, if it's single life, great. It really doesn't matter, I just want to do your will. And in my experience, that's a place that's hard won. You've got to really surrender, and that takes time and it takes perseverance, I think, to come to a place where you want to say, I just want to do what you want me to do, Lord. And then you're in a spot then to really hear Jesus say to you, yes, I am calling you to priesthood, or I'm calling you to something else. So I think that interior freedom, which happens through prayer and surrender, is absolutely crucial. The second thing I would say is, don't be afraid to take an adventure. Don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to say, I don't want this to be about me and my life of comfort. I'm prepared to take a risk and step out, to be adventurous. My experience has been that by nature, I'm not sure if I'm that much of a risk taker. I'm maybe a little bit risk averse, but I've found that I've grown in the adventure of faith and the adventure of my vocation. And the more and more in which I step out in faith, trusting that the Lord will lead me, trusting that He'll catch me, trusting that He'll guide me, it just means that I've had just the most incredible adventure as a priest. And I would love people to experience that. I think the Lord calls people, and perhaps some are maybe a little deaf because they're not fully surrendered, and maybe a little resistant because they're scared of what God will ask. But the truth is, it's an incredible adventure. It is a cross. There's sacrifices to be made. I've also got to say that whatever sacrifices I've made, they've been more than outweighed by the beauty of my vocation, the beauty of what God's called me to, and the privilege of being able to serve the people of God in the way that I've been asked to do.
Lord and giver of life, raise men filled with your power and with great missionary zeal, so that all who dwell in darkness may come to live in the light of Christ. Amen. "10 years of sharing the peace of Christ." Shalom World, God's own channel.